Alright, I guess I'd better start by cleaning up my act a little bit. Yesterday, or the last segment, we covered many of these items, and we showed how you kind of map into part of the Old Testament in a couple of ways. And I'm going to show you a third way before we actually do it. And I have to also apologize for the fact that I misspoke. And while I'm at it, I guess I'll add a little more clarity to the history of the Bibles, which I have some right here now. The Septuagint is the version that came about as a result of Constantine the Great's Council of Nicaea, which lasted about 2 years. And there was another one, or maybe it was the first, called the Vulgate. Now, a word like that kind of brings to mind something being vulgar or not refined. And maybe it's just my apprehension to use terms like that that caused a slip up, like telling you that they translated Latin into English. And impossible, they were Greeks. I don't believe anyone had even thought of English yet. So, having said that, I also need to apologize for the fact that although I'm able to review this entire little presentation from beginning to end, it's 4 parts now, it's necessary at the moment to download these individual sections one at a time. I have to show you something, and I'm not that savvy. So here we'll go now to the next part of this little treasure hunt. And as I said, I went and got some Bibles from the public library, and as you know, this is just a minuscule percentage of what's out there. It's been out there, and probably been thousands, tens of thousands printed by various number of authorities. But just like these dictionaries, you'd be astounded at the variations. However, I'm going to hold on right there and introduce you to another term. I'm going to have to get rid of this clipboard, bring something else up, because as I showed you, this little thing, we played with numbers. And here's another one. I hope you can all see that. Probably not. But if you'll notice, here, at the very top, I have what looks like chapter and verse, or chapter and verse again. We could just treat them as individual numbers if we like. And if you'll notice, 6 plus 12 is 18, 29 and 27 is 56. And we reduce these down to single digits if we can. Here is 1 and 8 becomes 9. 5 and 6 becomes 11. Well, that's all you can do. You can make that 2 again. You can guess what happens if you add the 9 and the 2 together. You're going to get 11. So we'll just leave this right here because it's important to understand how all this works. And what you'll notice also is that I could arrange them linearly in this fashion. And here we got 6 plus 29 is 35. 12 plus 27 is 39. We add them together. Again, we get 74. What happens when you reduce that to single digits? You get another 11. Let's try a little math with this combination of numbers. How about if we multiply 6 times 12 and 29 by 27? What happens? Everybody knows 6 times 12 is 72. Crunch those two together, you're going to get 9. 29 times 27 is 783. Put those together, what do you get? 9 again. Now that's interesting. Let's look at this 783 and this 72 here. What if we add them together? 72 and 783. 855. Bingo. Another 9. If we subtract the larger from the smaller, or rather the smaller from the larger, 711. And of course, there's 18 again, which becomes what? 9. So, a lot of interesting aspects to these numbers. Let me take this away. And take this away. Just so you know, I didn't just pick this out of a hat. And I'm not smart enough to think of this myself. But these are clues that came about as a result of the Council of Nicaea. These are references to scriptures, all right. But as you can see, there are numbers that we can operate on as well in so many ways. Now, this is an interesting combination. They're separate books. What is the meaning of that? I mean, is this just a coincidence? Well, I'll have to now show you what few people really want you to see. But here we go. I'm going to have to open these books because they're all numbered the same, remember. I'm not going to bore you with all the horrible details. We'll start with this one. This monster here, and there are giant ones everywhere. But this one's beautiful. It has illustrations from the Vatican Library. It's got, oh my goodness, everything you could ask for. This is an heirloom Bible. And, what's more, the credentials in here. Oh my God, just can't imagine what it says. Where is it? Can't find it. Okay. Anyway, what's the point? Matthew 6:29. What does it say? $6.29. Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Oh, that's 20. I'm sorry. 29. Here's the big one. Yet I tell you, even Solomon, in all his glory, was not clothed like one of these. That's interesting. Let's go to Luke 12:27. What does it say? Consider the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not clothed like one of these. Well, they're darn near verbatim the same, these two verses in the Gospels. And what you find out, I'm not going to bore you with the details, is that every one of these will demonstrate that. Indeed. But with some subtle differences. This is a Jerusalem Bible, 1966. By the way, that Bible came out in 1996. So this looks like it could be that old. It's pretty old already, isn't it? And it's been well used and bound together. It's good treatment. I like stuff like that. But here's the point. Unfortunately, when we go to Matthew 6:29, it reads, think of the flowers growing in the fields. They never have to work or spin. Pretty much the same thing. Yet I assure you that not even Solomon in all his regalia was robed like one of these. Now, that's not a problem at all. Aren't they saying the same thing? It'll say this very same thing almost in Luke, but not exactly what the other Bibles said. Here we go again. Now we're at Luke 12:27 in the Jerusalem Bible. What does it say? Think of the flowers. They never have to spin or weave. Yet, I assure you, not even Solomon in all his regalia was robed like one of these. Almost the same thing. What we do find, though, is they're making reference to a very well-known historical figure, Solomon. You almost already know where this is going, I'm sure. Here, let's look at another one where I really enforce this point. This one here is called the Living Bible, paraphrased, and I'm not even going to read it, because it will say Solomon in all his glory was never robed as one of these, and then the other version will say Solomon in all his glory was never clothed like one of these. Life Recovery Bible. That's next. What do you say about this? 1988. And it's going to say in Matthew, Solomon in all his glory was never dressed like one of these. And the other verse will say the exact same thing. Glory dressed. And they're the key words that we're looking at here, but we don't even know how important they are. Because the word I'm looking for hasn't appeared yet, but I'm going to show you it in a minute, and you'll get it. Oh, this one's called the Good News Bible. Where are you? Oh, this one says, Solomon in all his wealth never had clothes like these. What does 629 say? I didn't even double check that, did I? 629. But I tell you that not even King Solomon with all his wealth had clothes as beautiful as one of these flowers. So they do take liberties with the words. But these are not like the 70 men that assembled the Septuagint, I guarantee you. And what's kind of disturbing to me about that this Living Bible, this is the Life Recovery Bible, and this Living Bible were published by who? Tyndale House Publishers. Oh my God. Dayton, Illinois. And this one, Tyndale House Publishers. So it's the same publishing company. Is it a coincidence? Were these guys related to Mr. Tyndale? Did they use his name? You know, that's good housekeeping still. Well, this is not an indictment against any of these men. This is the way things work. As you can clearly see from the Bible. These dictionaries, they omitted something. And to the people who made that omission, it was selective, of course. So they chose to cram something else in their limited space at the expense of Mr. Fibonacci. Yeah. Good news. This is really good news because I wasn't expecting it to be this good. Let's just set these down. Is that what I'm looking for? The exact word I'm looking for is in these versions. And strangely enough, one is the Catholic Bible, and one is the Bible manufactured by, translated, as it says, by the Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, there are some subtle differences, very subtle differences, but we're not going to explain why that doesn't matter. Because one word is going to clear all this up. And what is that word? Well, let's go to the scripture. See what the verbal clue is. That explains why it was necessary to do things this way. Because there's power in understanding why this little advanced lesson was only to be known by a select few. Isn't that the way it always has worked? So, let's go to 629. In this version, and they print these every year practically. This one says 1984. I've got an old one. They may have changed it since then. Who knows? But the word I'm looking for is in here. And here it is. Matthew 6:29. But I say to you that not even Solomon in all his glory was arrayed as one of these. There's the word, arrayed. You know, the way you're just lining things up. For example, if you can read this chart I've got up here, that's an array. This is actually an array. It goes in two directions. What we call that a matrix. But it's a way of organizing things. You can array your kitchen table. You can array your linen. You can array your soldiers and your equipment. Everything can be set out in some kind of order. Now, why are they not being so careful about this word array? And you'll notice they're pretty consistent. All these guys who didn't use the word, at least they put it in both Matthew and Luke, as it was meant to be, because as you're going to see, this is a template that goes over another structure. And you can see how things are really organized. Numbers, this gets you there. Remember, I didn't invent that. They thought of this a long time ago. So, let's go to Luke 12:27. I got it right here. I had it right there. Where'd you go? Oh, yeah. Luke 12:27. We're looking for. Here it is. Mark well how the lilies grow. They neither toil nor spin. But I tell you, not even Solomon in all his glory was arrayed as one of these. And I always wondered, Solomon in all his glory, and these things just don't make any sense at all in the statement. I mean, Solomon must be a very curious person indeed, to be compared with a bunch of lilies in the field. But that's the word, array, that we're looking for. And it is consistent here. It's there. Just like these guys are consistent. So what's there to complain about? Well, remember who started this whole thing? Right. Let's look at what they got. And this is the Douay Rheims version. St. Benedict Press, 2009, very recent. Let's look at this. It's got everything in it. It's just not super fancy. And what is it? Oh, here it is. Oh, and there's that word I don't like. Translated from the Latin Vulgate. That's what they call it. And it's just published, you see. It says right here, imprimatur, that's special, whatever that is. James Cardinal Gibbons, Archbishop of Baltimore. Wow, look at this. September 1, 1899. What a coincidence, these numbers. So there it is. Can you get that? 2009 to a 911. 911 is right there in there. Get out. Anyway, what does it say? Let's go to, where are you now? Matthew 6:29, we're looking for that word. Do they have it? Oh, yes. But I say to you that not even Solomon in all his glory was arrayed as one of these. That's nice. That's comforting. So glad they did that. And now here, we'll go to Luke 12:27. Consider the lilies, how they grow. They labor not, neither do they spin. But I say to you, not even Solomon in all his glory was clothed like one of these. Difference. So, minor detail or not, I don't know. Who can say? I mean, what sources did all these different versions use? Don't dare call it a conspiracy because it's freaky. Here we go. The Holy Bible, English Standard Version. I like these, by the way. Let's look it up. Do we have that? Matthew 6:29. Like I said, this is going to be a while because I really don't want to have to lose continuity because of the continuous breaks in these lessons. So here we go. Matthew 6:29. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. So Luke 12:27. Where are you? Consider the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all was not arrayed like one of these. A winner. Such variations everywhere. And here's another one. I want to do this. Well, anyway, I only have Matthew here. Can't make a comparison because this is a really super big edition, many volumes. Only Matthew's there. We're going to come back to that because, like I said, all this maps into the Old Testament layer for layer. So, that was the point of that. To illustrate that one word like array indeed matters. And what do I mean by that? How you array things. Let's look at this. See, in addition to this difference, in all these Bibles, what we found out was that John, by virtue of verse 22:11 and 153 fish, gave us a clue that there was something about the book of Kings. Now, unfortunately, the way these line up, we have Matthew, which had verse 6:29 saying, Solomon was never arrayed, and Luke, verse 12:27, saying virtually almost the identical same thing. Solomon. You notice, 2. So, the thing to understand about these subtle differences is that this is the version everyone is used to, except the original Catholic version, which doesn't have a book of Chronicles. It has I can't even pronounce the whole thing, and I para something or other, and First Kings in the King James Version, which most people know about, is Third Kings, because First and Second Samuel, there is none in the Catholic Church. You see, 1 and 2 are gone. There was 1 king, 2 kings, which would have been So there's something changed. And this is the format that all the Protestants use. It lines up that way. Matthew, that's in the First Kings. Or in the Catholic version, Third Kings. But what's it going to tell you? When you get there, you'll find out. I'm not even going to bother showing you. You can learn it for yourself. But the first 11 chapters of First Kings, or Third Kings in the Catholic version, just 11 chapters. Well, how about that? They're all about Solomon. Just those chapters alone. The rest are additional history, if you will. Same thing. Almost the same story, but in this case, first 9 chapters. Now that is curious. These 11s and 9s are just everywhere if you have a clue where to look. So they tell you. The Old Testament in Matthew and Luke. Learn about Solomon. They give you a big clue in John. But much more to this 9 and 11 than that. And really, much more than most people will ever realize. So yesterday I spoke about this patriarchal system of things, how it's very old, and, well, before anything was probably written down, it was going on, with no instructions needed. And here's one from the Rig Veda. In fact, this is the very first verse of the Rig Veda. And this was, and still is to this day, committed to memory. It's a complete fraternal organization called the Brahmin, I believe. And they get them as kids. Children. And they put them in these schools, and they learn this. And if you've ever read the Rig Veda, especially this very first chapter, it's beautiful stuff. It really is. And unfortunately, God willing, I'm going to read this and not be doing what it says you do. So here it is. And a little tidbit of information when I get through with this. It's just to drive the point home. So I'm going to read this. I call upon Agni, the one placed in front, the divine priest of the sacrifice, the invoker, the best bestower of gifts. Agni, this is verse 2 now, is worthy of being called upon by seers, past and present. May he bring the gods here. Through Agni, one may obtain wealth and prosperity day by day, splendid and abounding in heroic sons. O Agni, the sacrifice and work of the sacrifice, which you encompass on all sides, that alone goes to the gods. May Agni, the invoker who has the powers of a sage, true and most brilliant in glory, come here, a god with the gods. So, whoever favor you wish to do for a worshipper, rather whatsoever favor you wish to do for a worshipper, Agni, that favor of yours surely comes true. O Angiras. And so on. I'm not going to read the rest of this, but as you can see already, this is some pretty deep stuff, really, if you think about the setting in which this is taking place. You just about imagine. So there it is already, you see in verse 3, it's very materialistic stuff, abounding in heroic sons. Here, verse 9. Yeah, this is only 9 verses. Out of 99, what a coincidence that is, huh? 9 times 11 is 99. So, here it is, 9th verse. So, he had easy access to his Agni as a father to his son. Abide with us for it will be. So, there it is. Absolutely nothing wrong with that, right? Buddha? What's really going on in this world? How long it's been going on? If you go to the 11th chapter of the Rig Veda, it's a complete expose of invocations. And this is a coincidence. 9/11, 9/11. You go to what they call the Zendavesta, and there are some very compelling verses, especially in the 9th and 11th Vargas, if you will. And there are other things, the Gathas from the ancient Avesta, which unfortunately are, as I understand it, all that remains. But there's an interesting, all that remains of an original collection of things which were destroyed during the time of Alexander. These things were housed in Persepolis, which was the ancient capital of part of the Persian Empire. I forget which place exactly. So, I wanted you to see that. How these things can differ. And I hoped this little clock would stay up, because that 11 is very, very dominant. Even in the Old Testament, any one of them. Because, just so you can figure this out in this particular lesson, we'll just go right into it. This little hourglass thing here, and I want to thank you, Joey, for calling it that. It's called sigma. Sigma. These operators here are logical operators. You can use them all kinds of ways. They're not just letters, as you can see. There's a plus sign, a minus sign, there's a times sign, multiplication. We used that already. The division sign, which kind of looks like scriptural kind of punctuation with a line through it. Who knows? Because every one of these things is something else in another language. Oh, hey, let's go to Genesis. Yeah, let's look at that. Genesis, where is 11? Almost forgot about that. 11, 9. Right here. Book 1. The Tower of Babylon, what they're calling this part. Anyway, this is what we want right here. Well, anyway, 11:1 says, at first the people of the whole world had only one language, and use the same words. Well, they're all going to say something like that. But 9 says, the city was called Babylon, because there the Lord mixed up the language of all the people. And from there, he scattered them all over the earth. Amazing, right? Yeah. Greek symbols. Won't go into that right now, but guess what? I showed you how 153 was the product of 17 and 9. And because I already know about this little formula here, oh, you can't even see that, can you now? But it's called a summation. This Greek letter is used in mathematics a lot. And it's called sigma. And you use it for a summation. And what is a summation? So when you add up everything from wherever you want to whenever you want, but they're always a consecutive group of things that you're adding up. You sum them up. And that's a little different from, say, what is the sum of 1 plus 2? Well, that's 3. We covered that. But if I said, what is the sum, and I gave you just one number, you'd be puzzled. What am I talking about? There's nothing complicated. I just want you to add the numbers, counting from 1, just 1, to whatever the number that I give you. For instance, the sum of 1 is obviously just 1. What's the sum of 2? 1 plus 2. How about the sum of 3? 1 plus 2 plus 3, and that's 6. It's so simple. Just imagine you had a bunch of blocks. I say, what's the sum of 4? Lay down 4 blocks. And those 6 blocks would fit right on top of that. 4, 3, 2, 1. You can kind of visualize it like that. So a sum naturally utilizes, in the mathematical, scientific notation, a little triangle. You see, it's very intuitive, but it really works. And they use those triangles in lots of ways. I'm not going to dwell on that too much, because the only point I'm making is this. It is said, I don't know if it's the Bible or the Quran, but Solomon is mentioned 17 times. There's 17 for us English and Western people, which is the same as this. Or rather, "19 times 7, 17, 17 times 9, which as we learned yesterday equals 153, is also the sum of 17, which means we just added all the numbers from 1 to 17. And you can do that with all the numbers, of course. And isn't it a coincidence that a lot of the numbers you're going to find indexed by these Bibles will be sums? Here's a good one. What is the sum of 11? I already know it already, but right here. Sum of 11 is 66. Because that's 1, 2, 3. You add them all up, including 11. And that gives you the book of Isaiah. In fact, if you were to look in all these Bibles, when they developed the teaching lessons from the top down, they made sure that they always picked verses or chapters that are combinations of 11 verses. And you can see that through Isaiah is a really good example of that. And I'm not going to dwell on that too much, because we're going to go right now to Kings. I'm going to have to set up some more props. I don't know how well I did this time around. I hope it took a little longer, so we have one solid stream of information. And again, I have to apologize for the absence of more actual, props like the rig baited up. But they're hard to get. They really are. So we'll be back. And again, thank you